Now, we move on to the final part of the day. That is our keynote speech. Our speaker has flown in just for today. Our speaker has flown in just for us. So it is with a huge thank you that we welcome him here. Ladies and gentlemen, could you put your hands together, please, for the Chief Education Officer of Globeducate, Mr. Daniel Jones.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be back and a privilege, and I couldn't not be here, could I, with this first time that all the staff of the two schools have come together. I spent most of my time talking about how important it is to create moments where we can share experiences and share our best ideas. And so this, having seen the agenda you've had today, where teaching and non-teaching staff have been involved, I think is absolutely fantastic. So, so congratulations to you and all the people who've worked so hard in making this happen today, and I hope you've had a great day, as Graham said. So I'm here to talk about this, the Globeducate agenda, which I'm sure lots of you already heard, but maybe don't know so much the detail about. So I'd like to give you some detail this afternoon. Before I do, let me just update you. This is Globeducate's global network. This is where we have schools around the world. And I think you probably knew about most of them. What you may not have known is that we have a new school just recently opened up in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and that's been opened by our Indian colleagues. We had an amazing opportunity to meet our Indian colleagues in Barcelona recently. Those of you who are involved in the Academic Olympics know that there were 25 Indian students came to one of our events for the first time with our Indian staff. And again, we'll be working more and more with them as time goes on. They're going to come to all of our events, and we're delighted about that. Our Canadian colleagues want to come as well. So we've got some Canadian students coming to our events this year too. And we really are working hard to try and bring people together. And that's what we believe and we know to be one of the main advantages that we have as a group. So that's us. We are now present in more than 50 schools across 10 countries and 3 continents, with more than 25,000 students, 2,500 teachers, and more than 70 nationalities. So it really is a global experience. When I joined what was NACE schools, or NACE, as you said in Italian, 4 years ago today, this is my anniversary. Thank you. We had a different mission. It was slightly different. The mission statement said, we prepare each student to live successfully in a globalized world. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that statement. We wanted our students to have the right skills and understanding of the world in which we live so that they could live successfully in that world. But when we became Globeducate, we spent a lot of time talking about that mission statement. And one of the things that we strongly believe in is that, yes, we want our students to live successfully in a globalized world, but what we really want them to do is to be able to make the world a successful place. So that rather than living successfully in a globalized world, they will be living in a successful world, which is globalized, because of their input. So it's less about them and more about what they can bring to the world. And this is what we strongly believe in. So we prepare each student to become a global citizen with all of the skills and understanding of what that means, who can, they might not want to, but who can shape the world because they want to make the world a better place. While we were there, we talked, and I know lots of you have seen this already, but we talked about how character attributes are important in the students in our schools. So we talk about words like having self-confidence, and as you will know from workshops that I've led on in the past, that confidence in yourself and self-esteem is right at the top of being able to be a good learner. Being respectful to others. Working hard, being perseverant, not giving up, being adaptable, open-minded people who are ethical, who want to do the right thing, who want to contribute to society. And this is what we believe in. We know that they will need some core competencies that you'll see in the middle here, and this has an implication for their programs of study. We've added things like financial literacy that we believe is important in the world, or experiences such as public speaking. And then at the bottom, we've got the experiences that we try to organise for them so that they can really make a difference, so that these students can become global citizens. Experiences such as travelling to other countries, such as experiential learning inside the classroom, outside the classroom, international events, which I know you know that we organise, and then we come to today's topic of this speech, which is the Globeducate agenda. Now, the Globeducate agenda, that is something new, starting this term, January 2020, and we have based it on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. Here they are, in all their glory. The idea being that by 2030, the world will have achieved so much in these 17 areas that there are measurable indicators that will decide whether or not we have really made the world a better place. Let me just quickly go through each of them, and if our technology works, this should turn into a video. So, there we go. Okay. Okay, thank you. If we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So they were the 17 development goals. Quite innocently, when we first started talking about wanting to use these goals in our schools, we decided that we would focus particularly on one of them, and that's called life on land. That's here. And then the more we spoke to people, to experts in the field, the more we realised that actually just looking at one sustainable development goal at a time isn't probably the most effective way to do it. In fact, there's a thing called a wedding cake for the SDGs, for the Sustainable Development Goals. And the wedding cake has 3 layers to it. The bottom layer is known as the biosphere, basically our planet. And you can see here we've got climate action, clean water, life on land, and life below the water. And the idea is that if we can get this right, then the second layer, which is our society, people, communities, can build on the biosphere. And if we can get our societies working well, then our economies should also be able to thrive. And core to all of this is doing it together. We can't do these in isolation, so having partnerships, which I'll talk about a little bit more about later on. So this is how the United Nations sees the 17 goals working. The biosphere being the basis, society being next, economy being at the top. this isn't the first time that the United Nations has established development goals. In 1990, there was an agreement to work towards what was called at the time the Millennium Development Goals. And the idea in 1990 was that in 25 years, in one generation, by 2015, we would, in the world, be able to improve significantly people's lives in these 8 development goals here. So you've got things like eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education. And again, for each of these, there were key indicators to let us know, to be able to measure how well the world is getting on. So how did the world get on with these Millennium Development Goals? What were the results like? Let me share with you the first one I mentioned, people in extreme poverty. In 1990, it was decided, because 36% of the world was living in extreme poverty, that the goal would be to halve it, to get to 18% by 2015. Pretty ambitious. Well, actually, the world exceeded its target. So in 25 years, the world has gone from 36% of people in poverty down to 12% in poverty in 2015. And the main reason for that is because of 2 countries, China and India, the 2 largest countries in the world. Half of the world, or nearly half of the world's population, is in these 2 countries. And the big difference between 1990 and 2015 is that the world became a richer place. Let me share a graph with you to show you what I mean. This is one measure of wealth, the gross domestic product. I'm sure geography teachers out there, you know exactly what I mean. So the GDP per capita, per person in the world, from 1960 up until now. So you can see how the world is becoming wealthier. And in 1990 to 2015, the world became 2.5 times richer in 25 years. And the good news for that was it meant that countries were coming out of poverty, particularly China and India, as I showed you on this slide here. The light grey is the rest of the world there. So the good news was that by 2015, people were coming out of poverty, particularly in China and in India. Here are those 8 goals again, divided by places, continents. So at the top you've got Africa, Asia, Oceania, Latin America, and Central Asia. And the green boxes, the dark green, is where there has been tremendous progress. The light green is where there's been moderate progress, and the yellow is what they would call fair progress. In other words, the greens and yellows are successful, the reds have not been successful. And the ones in grey, we don't have data, so we don't know. But if you look at all 8 of those Millennium Development Goals from 1990 to 2015, by 2015, using this measure as of fair to excellent progress, nearly all of the continents managed to achieve nearly all of the goals. So that's the good news. That's great news. However, of course, by 2015, we were starting to have a whole load of other problems. One of the goals here talks about environmental sustainability. And you'll see here, this is actually the one where least progress seems to have been made. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, said at the time, in 2015, that 2015 is a milestone year. We will complete the Millennium Development Goals. We are forging a bold vision for sustainable development, including a set of sustainable development goals. And we are aiming for a new universal climate agreement. So that was back then, that was back in 2015. And so the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were born from that moment. And there they are again. Now, how will we know, as we go, how well we are doing on these 17 SDGs? Well, one really good measure is the Social Progress Index. If you're interested, you can find out loads of great information about this on this website that I've put here. The Social Progress Index talks about three main areas: basic human needs, and you can see them here. Well-being, and opportunity. So there they are. This is known as the Social Progress Index, and the good thing about this is you can, from year to year, we can see by country, by region, how well we're doing. And this is very, very, very closely linked to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, let me share this with you, that in 2015, the highest performing country in the world was Norway on the Social Progress Index. Still is, it's gone up since then. So it's now at around about 91 out of 100. Norway is the best performing country in the world for social progress. Those three main areas I just showed you. In 2015, the worst country in the world was the Central African Republic. And it still is. The world average in the Social Progress Index in 2015 was 61. Now, the experts who know about these things assure us that the magic number to get to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030 is 75 for the world average. So we need, as a world, to move from 61 to 75 to be able to hit those targets. We're not going to all be like Norway, but we need to be on the way. Now, when I talked earlier about the Millennium Development Goals, and I explained that largely they were successful because two countries came out of poverty, or extreme poverty, China and India, you would think that there is a correlation between social progress and the wealth of a country. And there is. Here are some of the larger countries in the world. And you can see the trend line shows us quite clearly that the richer the country, the higher the social progress. But it's not quite so straightforward this time. So if we see here, I put here the world is at 61, and where we need to get to is 75 by 2030. But if you look at any economic prediction for the world between now and 2030, we will only get as far as around about 62. We're going to move from 61, and as the world gets wealthier, we will move on to about 62.4. Nowhere near the 75 that we need. Nowhere near. Interestingly, we have three countries here that are below where you would expect them to be, given their wealth. And they are. I've shown you Russia, China, and India. In fact, of all the richest countries in the world, of the G7 richest countries, only Canada is actually in the top 10 for social progress. That means that it's not necessarily just about money, it's about what the countries are doing. Look at these. There you've got Canada at the top, in the top 10 for social progress. You've got Norway, which is a richer country, and is slightly higher than Canada in social progress. In 2015, Qatar was down here. Actually, Qatar is now off the scale in terms of wealth. 130,000 per capita in Qatar. Look at these. Look at Rwanda. So Rwanda is one of the poorest countries in the world, but actually, in terms of social progress, they're doing pretty well. Costa Rica, New Zealand. So, if money is important to a point, but is not everything, then clearly other things come into play. Here is the world in social progress. And I thought I would just highlight these for you. If we look at the United States, for example, per capita they're the 8th richest country in the world. And in total terms, they are the richest country in the world. But they're only 26th in social progress. If you look at Russia, they're more or less where you would expect them to be. If you look at China, they are richer than they are in terms of money than they are in terms of social progress. And India are actually outperforming their wealth in terms of social progress. So while we're here in Italy, I thought I would put Italy on here too. This is the top 30 in the world. There you can see Norway is right at the top. And probably no surprise to see most of the G7 countries and also lots of European countries there. In terms of social progress. If you go onto the website I shared with you earlier, you can search by country. Here is Italy's dashboard. So you can see that Italy, in terms of social progress, actually outperforms its wealth. 22nd in the world, 27th in terms of wealth. And these bubbles here, the yellow ones, is where Italy is making expected progress. The blues down the bottom is where Italy is outperforming where it should be. So you've got things like universities here. And the reds, well, that's where Italy is underperforming where it should be according to its wealth. So you've got criminality here, you've got quality of electricity, you've got water as well, and you've got the percentage of vulnerable people who are employed, for example. So, interesting. As I said to you a minute ago, if we are going to manage to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to get to the magic number being 75. But the economic predictions are telling us we're going to get to 62. So it seems that, unlike the Millennium Development Goals, this is going to be a lot harder to manage to achieve. And I think this is where we come in. The current prediction, 62.4. If all the countries in the world who are underperforming, they manage to perform where they should, it only gets us to 65. If we can improve every country in the world, they say it will get us to 67. If we massively improve them all, to 72, still not at 75. So some things need to change more radically. Now, the Globeducate agenda, which I talked about right at the start, is our attempt to make this happen. To ensure that our students can make a difference in the world. At the same time, we want to make sure that our teachers and our educators, first of all, you really buy into this, that you believe in this, and secondly, if you do believe it and buy into it, that it's manageable. It's something that we're not going to take a top-down approach and say, this is what you have to do. Because that's not what we believe is going to work. So, what we've done for 2020, starting now, is we've partnered with 2 associations. One of which, here in Rome International School, you will know very well, which is the Eco Schools Association. And the second one, which I'm sure you all also know very well, is the WWF. Now, I know Rome International School is already an eco school. You are the beacon of excellence in Globeducate. You are the school that we talk about when we talk about being an eco school, because you already have your green flag. but I'm sure there's much more we can still do. With the WWF, we are the first group of schools to have an official partnership with the WWF. And the WWF actually were key in establishing the Sustainable Development Goals. They worked with the UN to determine them, to identify them. So we think these are two great partners to have. With eco-schools, we think this is going to help us to address 5 of those Sustainable Development Goals. The biosphere ones, and the clean water as well. And as lots of you will already know, to become an eco-school, schools have to go through 7 points, and here they are. The great thing about this is it's student-led. The students have to form a committee, carry out a review, come up with an action plan, monitor it, evaluate it. There needs to be work done in the curriculum, the community gets involved, and the school produces an eco-code. And after 2 years of implementation and good performance, the school can get a green flag. So more than 50 schools, our schools, are all working now towards achieving green flag status. These are the kind of topics which the Eco Schools Association recommend we talk about and which we typically are already doing. And there's a couple of websites here if you're interested in knowing more. Okay, so this is happening. Here's some really simple examples that some of our schools have already put in place to help with their eco-school status. So you've got things like not using single-use plastic, you've got reducing paper, banning balloons from school events, glitter and foam sheets. I had no idea that they were so bad for the environment, but apparently they are. So these are the sorts of things that we can do quite easily. And we can do it in our offices, in our centres as well. In our head office, we no longer use single-use plastic, for example. Let me tell you a little bit about the partnership with the WWF. They actually came up with this logo themselves. So, working together to inspire youth for the future of our planet. And we've committed to working with them, A, because we think it's a good idea, and B, because they have all sorts of resources and materials that they can share with us. As you can see here, the WWF is present in over 100 countries. They played a key role in establishing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They have online education, which is free for teachers. They can bring us inspirational speakers into our schools. And there's all sorts of educational resources that they are offering us. So, when we went to the WWF Living Centers, as it's called in the UK, to talk to them about this, we agreed that the schools would have just 2 minimum actions that we would like you to work on this year. But there's a whole load of other things that you can work on as well. So I'd like to share that with you. So this year, across our 56 schools, in February and March, on Netflix, we have the rights to screen the Our Planet series, which is on Netflix right now. It's done by David Attenborough. It's marvellous. It talks about wildlife issues and all the challenges that the world is currently facing. And we are also going to do a fundraising day on or around the 5th of June, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. So this is the Our Planet documentary. It's in 8 parts. They are obviously research-based documentaries, highlighting urgent challenges. We have the permission to broadcast them to our students, to our parents, and to our local communities. And we would like our primary schools and our secondary schools to select one episode each to screen to the children. Each of the episodes comes with resource packs, all sorts of things that you can work on in class as well. We have the option to invite parents. We have the option to bring in a guest speaker from the WWF, and all of this is available in different languages. So let me give you a quick taster of our planet, if you haven't already seen it.
This is the story of our changing planet. And what we can do to help it thrive.
Sit under the earth, tied up in the night, which I forgot you would ever. I think it's wild.
Our Planet. Only on Netflix.
Okay, so that's the first activity that we're asking our schools to get involved in. At least one of the episodes with different ages of children working with the educational packs that will be provided. Here's the second one. Here's the Wear It Wild. So Mr. Wilson, Mr. Thompson, you can dig out your animal outfits and get yourself ready for the 5th of June. Think about who you're going to dress up as. So dressing up day with a difference, the greatest school of day of the year. And this again comes with curriculum resources, assembly ideas, activities to do in the classroom, and here's some examples of how schools engage with this down here. So you've got some different types of activities that the kids can do as well. I like the last one particularly, breakfast deliveries to teachers. So whatever it is that you can think of, you please, as many creative ideas as possible. In June, 5th of June, or around that date, we're going to be doing the Wear It Wild. And this is something done across the world by the WWF. Apart from that, we've got some other optional events. This is a great event, which is the Our Planet Future Summit. It's like a role-play simulation, a bit like doing a Model United Nations. It takes half a day. It's for secondary age students, where they are given a role. They could be a business leader, they could be a political leader, they are given a country that they have to look after, and it's like a trade game. And again, we've got that available, we've got a pack available to schools to do if you feel that you would like to do it. This was the Living Center that I mentioned, where we went to the WWF. We were super excited to go there and to partner with them, but they were actually super excited to partner with us. And we said, well, we like you. And they said, yes, we like you too. So it's a great relationship that we've started. It's in the UK, and we have an open invitation to go. So we are already organising for our 2 UK schools and for one of our parish schools. They're going to have a tour, some educational workshops, a treasure hunt around the building as well. This is something that, again, that we can offer. This is when I went inside. I had to take some photos, and this is their offices. And you've got these little booths where you can have conversations as well. So a really beautiful place. Another optional activity. Every year there is something called the Earth Hour. And this year it's at 8:30 on the 28th of March, where people around the world turn off their lights in support of saving electricity and also reflecting on climate change and what we can do to help. So there's all sorts of community events going on. It would be wonderful if that happened here in Rome, and that's something, again, that you can think about. Adopt an animal with WWF, where schools or classes, they choose a symbolic adoption. They get all sorts of information about the animal that they're adopting. Again, it's a fundraising and awareness-raising activity. Other things that some of our schools are doing. A BioBlitz. There's this wonderful app called Seek. I put a little picture of it here. Basically, you use on your phone, you use the camera to take a picture of any plant or animal that you find in your local area, upload it, and if the app works, which it normally does, it will give you all sorts of information as to what the insect, what the animal, what the plant is, and it's a great way of taking the students to their local area and learning more about the habitat in which they live. So this is something else that we can do. The app is free, it's available to all, and I think it's a wonderful lesson for students of any age. Of course, we'd love you to connect with each other, Southlands and Rome International on this, but also with other Globeducate schools, because the more we can talk about these things, the more we can share what we're doing, the more we're going to benefit together. Remember the guest speakers that we've got as well, and I'm sure Mr. Thompson's already thinking of some of our Planet assemblies that he can be leading here in Rome International. Finally, I mentioned about teacher education. There is, with TESS, the TES, which is one of our cousin companies, let's call it, because Globeducate and TESS have the same owners. And TESS have also partnered with WWF to create free online teacher education courses for sustainable development. So if it's something that you're interested in, something that you have a passion in, I would urge you and advise you to, there should be a web link there. There is on the PowerPoint. It's just blanked out here. But there's a web link which will take you to this page, 6 to 8 hours long. And again, it helps teachers to develop whole school strategies or classroom strategies to engage pupils more. So again, we think this would be tremendously positive if some of our teachers would engage with this and then share what you're doing in your schools so that we can all benefit from seeing what you're doing, all this great work that you're doing already, and share our best ideas. So there you have it. This is the start of what we're calling the Globeducate Agenda. And as I said, we're going to start with 2 things with the WWF, screening of our planet and a fundraising day, and working towards eco-school status in all of our schools. But that's just the start, and there's all sorts of other things that are already happening in our schools and that you are doing as well. And I think the more that we do this, the more we're going to be able to make a contribution towards those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll leave you today with some of the words which I hope now make sense to you. So remember, 75 is a magic number. It's an ambitious number. And I wish you all the luck in the world. And all I would say is, please tell us all about it so that we can share your wonderful work with our colleagues. And with that, I'm going to say grazie mille and thank you for inviting me.